How do I get people to really be on board with taking ownership?
What we can do better next time.
Are you stepped up and made something happen?
Do you do these things that I need to see from you?
Is that right? Like, should we do this?
How do we get people to align with the values within our company? The topic for this week is praising the behavior that you want to see. And we came off last week's episode talking about our missions and values and getting some alignment with our team around what those values are within the culture of our organization. But sometimes, as I know you guys have seen when we've been working with clients, they've got this long list of values. They're printed up or painted on murals in their offices. And yet, when they get on meetings, what are they spending the vast majority of their time focused on? The metrics, the numbers, the bottom line. And so what we tell our people in those instances is that we actually don't value these behaviors, these characteristics, we value the numbers. And so how do we get people to align with the values within our company?
Yeah, I think what you should do as a leader is never praise anyone ever. That's what you should do. No, in all seriousness.
That's Jocko's methodology.
Yeah, after 100 combat missions in Ramadi, Jocko was like, good job.
Maybe a fist bump. You get a fist bump every once in a while.
But that you don't expect a lot of praise when it comes to Jocko. I appreciate that because when you do get praise, you're like, wow, note that. That
means the world.
He said good job.
Remember it. Yeah, I've got like 3 of those in like 20 years of working with Jocko. In all seriousness, you absolutely have to praise the behaviors that you want to see in people. You want to be very careful about praise, though, because I think sometimes leaders tend toward praising everything and everything's great all the time, and there's a tendency toward what I call false cheerleading, where if I say, "Hey Jamie, everything's great," "Hey Jamie, everything's awesome," then when you really do a good job, it doesn't really stand out at all, right? It's kind of like we say in prioritize and execute. If everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So if I'm constantly just throwing out praise all the time, it doesn't really mean much. And I need to actually have some course corrections. I need to talk about where we need to improve things. And obviously I start with ownership and I use the indirect approach and all those things. But I really do need to save the praise for when it matters most. And when I do have people that are stepping up and making things happen and doing a great job, you do have to praise that. It means so much to people to recognize like, oh, okay, this is what I need to do. Because I think for a lot of people, they don't know what good actually looks like. I mean, we talked about in our previous episode, right, about having confidence and stepping up as a leader. And that is, people think they're doing a good job when they go to the boss and they say, hey boss, what do you want me to do? Instead of actually making a call or saying, hey, here's what I think we should do to solve a problem. They actually think they're doing a good job by just asking for guidance. So if people don't know what good looks like, then they don't know actually how to repeat that. And one example I could give you this is, Sean, you probably experienced this in your career in the SEAL teams like I did, where when I was a young junior officer, we would get, all this guidance and we get these example PowerPoint presentations about what our operational brief should look like. Something that we later called the operations order or op ord. But at the time we called it the platoon leader's order. That was the classic term that SEALs had used since Vietnam. And so this was the mission brief that you're giving to your team. And every time we gave a mission brief, I was told that it sucked. I was told that we were amateurs. By the way, like we weren't even fully qualified SEALs yet. We were students. I'm like, yeah, we actually are amateurs. Like, I'm not a qualified SEAL yet. I don't know what good looks like. But we never actually knew what good looks like. The instructors would just say like, oh, your brief sucks. Your brief isn't good enough. Your brief isn't what it should be. And it wasn't until I started working with Jocko that I really got this understanding that like, look, if you're giving a mission brief, the goal is that everybody on your team understands the mission and can go out and execute. That is the goal. And once I recognized that, like, oh, awesome, we can do that. That's what good looks like. And we wrote about it in Extreme Ownership that when we first started this in the planning chapter of Extreme Ownership, when we first started that, me and the other platoon commander and tasking and bruiser that worked for Jocko, he said, hey, do this for your brief. And we're like, is that right? Like, should we do this? Like, if our commanding officer in the room, shouldn't we brief to him? And he said, no, you should brief it to your team. So you have to actually, you have to show people what good looks like. And so you have to do that. If you're stepping up and making things happen and you're building strategic relationships and you're going above and beyond to deliver impact to our clients, I need to say, hey, Jamie, great job. This is what we need to do. And I can use that for the team. If Sean's not doing that, I can use that for the team to say, hey team, Jamie, I'm recognizing you, in front of everybody, on the front of all your peers, in front of the entire team, up and down the chain of command and across the chain of command. And when they see that's what good looks like, now they can start to emulate. Sean can say, hey, well, I want some accolades. I want some praise. Let me start to do what Jamie's doing. And so now we understand what good looks like, what the standard is, and we can work toward that.
Yeah, I had lots of good bosses in my time in the SEAL teams, and a couple of bosses that maybe could have improved a little bit. But even the good bosses, I can only think of really one commanding officer that I work for that sat me down on day one, and I was a troop commander, and he sat me down on day one and said, this is what success looks like for you in your role as a troop commander. And the shocking thing to me was it had nothing to do with my tactical ability. Because in his mind, I wouldn't be in that position. I wouldn't have earned the right to be a troop commander if I didn't have the tactical ability to do the job. So he laid out for me what it means to be successful at his team as a troop commander. And most of it was personal behavior type stuff. It was like, I expect you to be a good teammate. And what I mean by that is when you come back from a training trip, I expect you to debrief with the other two troops and give them all of your lessons learned, the things you did right, the mistakes that you made. I expect you to build good relationships with all the different departments at a SEAL team. And I expect you to always put what's best for the SEAL team ahead of what's best for your troop. And he said, if you do those things, you're successful. And then he said, very fairly, and if you don't do those things, you won't have a job at my SEAL team. Awesome, great. I now know what success looks like. I had the opposite experience when I was a platoon commander, where I never sat down with my commanding officer. I worked directly for this individual, and I never sat down with him until my out-processing debrief, where basically the command tour was over, all the platoons are going in different directions, the tour's over. He sits me down and he gives me a debrief and basically tells me all of the things that I didn't do right. And I'm sitting here in the back of my mind going, I didn't even know that I was responsible for those things. And if I would have known that those were things that really mattered to you, I would have put more time and energy into accomplishing those things. It was very frustrating for me from an individual perspective, thinking that I was aligned with what success looked like, and then hearing at the end of the day that I had missed the mark in his mind that I never knew I was even supposed to achieve. So having that experience followed immediately by the good commanding officer that said, hey, Sean, this is what success looks like for you, was like a night and day experience. So I've always tried to do that for the people that I've been in charge of and the people that I've had the opportunity to lead now is day one, sit them down and just show them what success looks like for them. And very similarly, very rarely is it ever kind of the KPIs and the job itself. Like, yes, those things have to be accomplished, but you wouldn't be in that position if I didn't think that you were capable of doing those things. It's the extracurricular things that we need from leaders, the behaviors, the teamwork, the making sure that you're empowering other people on the team. It's those behaviors that are really, really important for people to understand as far as that's what success looks like. And that's all set by the leader.
And I think what you're describing there is the balance between the two, because the KPIs, the metrics, those bottom line, those numbers, the end result is certainly important, but it has to be balanced with giving your team praise for the other elements, because sometimes your team's going to make a mistake or their plan doesn't go as you anticipated. And so what does your team feel in those situations if all you ever hear are the metrics, the numbers, and the end result, and they miss on that? Then we're tearing down their confidence. We're actually setting our team backwards. And what happens is our team, where I see this play out a lot is clients who are really trying to build a culture of extreme ownership. And the struggle they're finding is, hey, how do we build this into our culture? But when you ask them those questions, hey, how often are you talking about these things? How often are you giving some praise when you see people use these principles in action? And the answer is almost always never, because they're spending their times looking at Excel sheets, looking at data charts, looking at dashboards, and making all of their decisions and telling their team in the subtle way, this is what we actually value. And I see this play out with my kids where I think about the end result. My son comes home, he's gotten an A on his science report. That's awesome. That end result is definitely where we want to be. But if I praise the A and the next time he doesn't get the A, he feels like a failure. I didn't get an A this time. So instead of praising the A, I'm praising the effort. Hey, I'm so proud that you were disciplined enough to study and prepare for this test. And look what the outcome was. You got an A on this test. My daughter, she plays soccer. If I praise her for the goal she scored, she's always looking to get that goal as opposed to the behavior that I want to see, which is that she's working hard in the field. She's being a good teammate. She's being a leader and communicating. Even if the end result is they lose the game, I want her to recognize that I praise that behavior. And at Echelon Front, we try to do that and balance the metrics and the numbers, which are important, with our principles. And when we see someone on the team, hey, Jen, I know we didn't quite hit our numbers for this last muster, but I want to just say thank you for taking the time to do a thorough debrief with your team and cover and move here and work with marketing to have a better plan moving forward. And all of a sudden, we're praising that behavior, which encourages her next time to do those things and continue to implement these principles effectively. And I know that if we do that, the number is going to represent what we want it to represent. Not every time, but we're going to get much closer to where we need to be if we're focused on the behaviors that get us to there.
And a really natural environment to do these things is a debrief. And everyone should be debriefing as often as they possibly can.
All the time.
Yeah, and it creates this awesome environment to where we can talk about the things that went wrong and talk about how to correct them, but it's also an awesome opportunity to call out the behaviors that we want to see and reinforce the behaviors that we want to see. And when I was running our wartime training command, one of the things that I would tell the platoons during their intro brief to training was the key thing that's going to determine your success here. Yes, it's your effort you put into it, but the biggest determining thing is how seriously you take the debrief. If you're willing every night, no matter how long we're out there, at the end of the night to get together and spend 15 or 20 minutes just debriefing and talking about the mistakes, talking about the things that went right, you're going to be very successful in this training and you're going to get better and better. If you are not willing to do those things, in spite of all the resources we're providing you, in spite of the world-class training we're providing you, you're only going to get to a certain level of proficiency if you're not doing that debrief on your own. And that's not something that we controlled as the trainers. That was up to them. And what I saw time and time again is platoons that debriefed and talked about mistakes and then praised the behaviors that they wanted to see outperform platoons that didn't do it, hands down, night and day, every single time.
I'm just going to add one thing because I think that debrief culture is so critical in an organization. And we have to get past the initial friction people feel with a debrief. And the way we do it is we literally debrief everything. We look at this as informal and formal opportunities. They don't have to be very long. It can be short and subtle. I mean, after today, we're going to do a quick debrief to talk about the podcast, what we can do better next time. And if
all
we
the
do
things that
it,
you screwed up.
yeah, all the things that I screwed up. Exactly. But that's the point is like you tear away the negativity of like, now we have to have a debrief because too many organizations, they debrief when something goes wrong. When something's gone wrong. As opposed to, we're going to debrief everything and look at this as just constant ways to get better. And that reinforces our values and helps ensure that we don't continue to make the same mistakes.
And that training environment was a brutal one, right? You're putting SEAL platoons and SEAL task units in environments to try to mimic combat as best you can. So you want them to make the mistakes of training so that they're not going to make mistakes on the battlefield where there's actually lives at stake. And so oftentimes those debriefs would get really critical. And even though I was never at TradeEd, but when Jocko was still at TradeEd in that same role that you were later in as the officer in charge of all of the training detachment that was running that training for every SEAL platoon and task unit, I would go out as the operations officer to the SEAL team or the executive officer to the SEAL team and just watch the training and try to provide some guidance and mentorship. And oftentimes, particularly initially, when I first went out there, because I cared, because I wanted them to succeed, because I wanted them to be prepared for the worst case scenario on the battlefield, I would be really critical in my debriefs. And I noticed that Jocko's debriefs always had some positive element in them. He would be brutally honest with people and certainly talk about, hey, listen, you got to do a better job of getting a head count. We need to stay focused on what the mission is. We need to be able to quickly prioritize and execute. He would have a lot of things for people, but he would always have something that said, hey, where's fire team leader from the fire team 3? Hey, awesome job out there. You stepped up, you made a call. That's what we need to see. No one else is around to make that call, but you stepped up into a higher leadership position and got your team moving to solve a problem. We need more fire team leaders doing that. This is an example of exactly what we're talking about, praising the behaviors that you want to see. And when I saw that happen, I realized I'm not doing that. Because the problem is in a debrief, it was coming from a good place in my heart. Like I wanted these guys to be successful on the battlefield. We'd been in the Battle of Ramadi in 2006. We'd lost the first SEALs killed in the Iraq War. I wanted these guys to go out and be successful and to try to bring as many guys home as they possibly could. But when you're critical and you're just tearing apart everything, that's going on, people think, well, it's just Leif. He's super critical and we can never achieve that standard. And it becomes what I talked about earlier, right? Your brief sucks, and it's like, well, nothing's ever good enough. So why would I even try to get better? But when you actually praise those behaviors and say, hey, listen, that was awesome. Great job stepping up. We need more people to do that. Now everybody can see, that's what good looks like, and I need to emulate that.
The further that I moved up the chain of command in the military as well, the more I realized the impact that my words had. And the more I transitioned towards when I was talking to, as a troop commander, my frontline troops, go out there, watch them run this, awesome field training exercise out at our land warfare block. If I was talking just to the front line, I almost never said anything negative to the front line because I understood the impact that my words would have. So I would look for the positive things that I could praise. Those points are still getting brought up, but I don't need to bring that up as the troop commander. I've got a platoon commander, I've got a platoon chief, I've got a platoon LPO, and they can get into that finite minutia of the things that were right and wrong. If every time as the troop commander, the overall in charge, if I was to come down and every single time pick something negative, people are never going to want to hear from me. So I've got a team of people that can do that. And I chose to be a little bit more mindful about emphasizing the things that I could praise for my front line over the things that I needed to be critical about, because I have a lot of layers of leadership in between me and them that are doing those debriefs. So I know and trust that those smaller points are coming out. And it gave me more of the ability to detach and go, yeah, we had some things that we could have done differently. I know my platoon chief's going to address that. Let me pick the one or two things that I saw that the guys did really, really well and reinforce that.
And part of this is understanding your people. Understanding that there are some people on your team who highly value praise and need a little bit more of that. They need more praise. I have kids who need a little more praise and others that don't need that as much. And same with our teams, recognizing when we need to plus that up a little bit and recognizing when we can focus on just moving forward with the mission. And knowing your people helps you mitigate that properly.
You mentioned, Jamie, how, when we see companies that are struggling, right, because they're not praising these, they're not praising the leadership traits that they want to see, the behaviors they want to see. They're not talking about extreme ownership or cover and move and decentralized command. They're not using these terms. The opposite of that, where we see teams that are really driving this into the culture, and we see people that are giving out helmet stickers, for someone that stepped up and took extreme ownership, right? Or someone that's really put the other team first and reached out to another team and shared some good information or shared some resources or sent some individuals over to help cover down when another team is really struggling. And so they get a cover move sticker, and we see it on a job site. It's construction or, an energy service where they're putting helmet stickers on their hard hats, or they have patches that they put on, a jacket they're wearing, or a shirt that they're wearing, for the company uniform. These little things make a huge difference. And, there's a saying that's attributed to Napoleon, that a soldier will fight long and hard for a bit of colored ribbon. And what this is talking about is the military award system. You're getting a ribbon that in itself is just absolutely worthless. It doesn't mean anything. The value of the ribbon itself, costs just a few cents. But when you're recognized in front of your peers, and someone hands you that piece of ribbon and they know that it means that you did something incredibly courageous, or you stepped up and made something happen, or you saved the lives of other people, that ribbon has massive value. And the value isn't the ribbon itself, right? The value isn't the award itself. The value is the peer recognition in front of the team, that you are exhibiting the behaviors that everyone aspires to. And so I think, for organizations, you can absolutely do that with helmet stickers. You can absolutely do that with awards and praise and acknowledgement when you see people that are stepping up and making things happen. And even if something was screwed up, if people take ownership of a problem and implement a solution to get that problem solved, so now you have confidence that that problem is not going to happen again, and we're sharing that across the organization so that we're getting better as a result, that is absolutely praiseworthy, that some of you can call somebody out on and acknowledge that in front of the entire team.
Yeah, that little ribbon that you're talking about, for me at Echelon Front, we kind of gave Jocko a hard time because he's not necessarily a man of like ready praise. And but hey, his value and his praise comes in his trust and his, opportunity for you to lead and run things. But that little ribbon for me is that fist bump when I get off the muster stage after my brief, or when we complete the muster and you get that little fist bump. That's the little piece of ribbon. He gives me fist bumps all the time, but there's something more powerful in that little moment, because I know that's his way of saying like, hey, good job. I'm proud of you. Like, that means a lot in that moment. And we did that at Echelon Front. We realized even within our own teams, we need to find ways to praise the behaviors we're seeing all the time. So a practical way is in meetings, focusing on the numbers, but setting aside a little bit of time to give some shout outs or say, hey, I just want to say, thanks to Kim for reaching out to this other department and finding a way to support them. Or, hey, thanks to Noah for simplifying a plan. We had a complex problem we were trying to solve for, and he stepped up and put a simple plan in place. Just finding those little ways to reinforce it. And we took that one step further, and to talk a little bit about the ribbon piece and how much value that brings is we implemented something at Echelon Front where we allowed everyone at Echelon Front to nominate 2 or 3 people on the team and tie it to one of the laws and principles that we believe, our values at Echelon Front. And we gave some awards. And what was so fun about that is that 5 people got an award, 1 for each of the laws of combat and 1 for extreme ownership. But what was so cool is that we had, of our team of 36 people, 33 people had received some sort of a nomination. And what was so fun is afterwards sharing with each of those people, hey, you may not have received this award, but here's what your peers had to say about you. Here's what they, communicated to us that they're seeing in the way that you interact. And again, small ways to reinforce that, yes, the end result matters, but what we really value are the behaviors that lead to those outcomes.
I've had this conversation with more than one CEO of very successful companies that they've basically asked me this exact same question, which is the topic today, which is how do I, get these values of cover and move, of, really building teamwork and relationships across the organization? How do I get people to really be on board with taking ownership and understanding that taking ownership is about fixing mistakes, not about assigning blame? And I ask him this question, and the question is, well, when you look at like your promotion structure, are any of these things taken into account when you promote people? And not once have I had a leader tell me, yes, they are. So then they're not really putting any value or any weight behind this. Now, should that be the only thing that you promote on? Probably not. There still has to be some, job performance that goes in there. But if you're really trying to say that these are the things that your organization values, but you're not promoting those things and you don't have a culture of calling those things out and actively seeking your next generation of leaders from the people that are doing those things, then you're not going to have the impact. It's not going to have the impact that you want it to have at your organization. Just like that good commanding officer that told me, hey, yeah, the tactics are one thing, but what success for you looks like at the end of the day is going to be, do you do these things that I need to see from you? So if you're saying that you value them, but you're not putting any weight behind them, you're just kind of paying lip service to it.
That comes into play too with performance reviews. We created for ourselves at Echelon Front a performance review that is really tied to the core principles that we believe in. And we've shared that with clients to use and edit and make their own. But that's a great way, and we'll post that somewhere. I don't know where. The team will figure that part out. But we'll post that because that's, again, a way to reinforce it. Hey, when we evaluate your performance, there's a KPI conversation for sure. We're looking at those metrics, but we're going to have you assess yourself, and your manager is going to assess you as well on these core values, whether it's the values of the company or for us at Echelon Front, our laws of combat, extreme ownership.
And we're not talking about participation trophies here. This isn't just, hey, great job. Again, we talked about that false cheerleading can be so dangerous if you're praising performance that isn't actually good and it isn't actually what you want. Then what are people going to do? They're going to keep doing the same thing. Hey, you told me I'm doing a good job. And that's actually the worst kind of leadership. If Sean's underperforming and behind closed doors, Jamie and I are like, hey, Sean is a problem. He needs to step it up. He's messed up. Like we need to tighten him up. He needs to step up his performance. And then we call him into the room and we're like, hey, Sean, great job. You're doing great things overall. Maybe there's a couple of things to tweak.
That sounds really familiar, Leif. I'm actually concerned that those conversations happen behind closed doors.
This is entirely fictional.
Totally fictional, right?
Totally fictional scenario. But that's if we are failing you as a leader, right? If we're just praising performance, because even if I say, hey, there's a couple of things to work on, once we've said what a great job you're doing and how awesome you are, that's all you hear. Because that feeds your ego. We're not talking about participation trophies here. This is not just wild praise everywhere for everybody all the time. What we're talking about is when someone actually steps up and exhibits the behaviors that we want to see. They take ownership of problems, they implement solutions, they reach across the aisle to other teams to share information and share resources and help. All the laws of combat we talk about, they keep things simple. They communicate in a simple, clear, concise manner. They ask for clarification. They share that. They prioritize and execute. And they shift to rapidly emerging new priorities and recognize, hey, strategically, this is much more important than what we're working on right now. We need to shift and work on this. That's a huge one that we see all the time, right? Where all of a sudden, everyone's doing their job and some giant immediate fire comes up and everybody drops what they're doing and focuses their efforts to reprioritize. That's a great one to deliver some praise on. And of course, decentralized command, when you've got leaders at every level, particularly at the junior level, right, that are stepping up to make calls or at least make a recommendation to move the team forward toward the strategic goal. You got to praise that behavior so that everybody can see that's what they need to do so that everybody on the team can be successful.
And so our immediate action drill for this week is to look for, recognize someone on your team, or maybe it's your kids, that are exhibiting the behaviors that represent your values, that align with your values within your organization, and take the opportunity to offer them that praise and reinforcement.
And we're not looking for false cheerleading here. We're just looking when you see behaviors and people moving the direction that they need to, even if they make a mistake, but they did it in a well-intentioned way, it's praiseworthy to talk about, hey, listen, I love where your heart's at. That's what you need to be thinking. We can tweak that and maybe do it a little bit differently or a little bit better this time, and here's why. But use that as a training opportunity to provide some praise so that people can recognize what good looks like and they can emulate those behaviors. When you do that, that is going to enable you to build a culture of extreme ownership up, down, and across the chain of command so that you, your team, your family can lead and win.
Find us on YouTube or wherever you like to listen to podcasts and do all the things you're supposed to do. Like, subscribe, share, leave us a review, but most importantly, send us the leadership challenges that you're facing right now so we can target our next episodes to helping you understand how to apply the principles of extreme ownership to solving those challenges.
Check out our free resources at echelonfront.com, or you can take the next step and join the Extreme Ownership Academy, our online training platform, where we go deeper on these principles and teach you how to apply them in your business and in your life.